Sekeres Price for Wednesday, February 21st, 2024, coming to you from the Go-Goat Sports Studio, built by Arbor Lee, here at the iconic Wall Center at downtown Vancouver, where there is a fantastic community of people. They enrich our daily lives. Shout out to Jerry and Emma up at Cafe One, Leah and Rafi at Wall Center Fine Spirits, and Jason and Aziz at World Class Auto Care. And if you're looking for a night's stay here in downtown Vancouver, call the Wall, 604-331-1000. That's for the Sekeres Price rate. Some blackout dates apply. Matt Sekeres alongside Blake Price. Great success, hitting switches, conducting things alongside Madison Buckingham. We got a big show, and it's planned for you, and it's all brought to you by Applewood Auto Group.
Applewood Kia in Surrey has the Kia Niro EV. They've also got the Niro EV6, and you can get a complimentary EV charger or a complimentary set of winter tires. Your choice if you just pay a visit to Applewood Kia in Surrey. It's all good at Applewood.
Poll question today: how are you feeling after 3 straight losses? Fine, first place, or concerned? You can vote at Sekeres Price on Twitter and YouTube. I voted fine. Everything is fine. They still have cushion atop the Pacific.
Are you quoting the animated dog meme with the house on fire?
No,
this is fine.
No, I don't. I mean this sincerely.
Oh, okay.
It's fine. Everything is fine. First 3-game losing streak of the season in late February. We all would have taken that at the beginning of the year. Still cushion atop the Pacific. Still cushion atop the West. Many more opportunities to play some of the best teams in the league, including the Boston Bruins, who are here on Saturday night, including Vegas and Winnipeg and others between now and the end of the regular season. I am not Chicken Little. This was bound to happen. Everything is fine. Fine.
Boy, you seem to be saying it a lot. It's like you're trying to convince yourself.
No, not in the least. Dakota Joshua's missing. He's been a key part for them.
They're at 80 points.
Power play has gone quiet. More on that coming up. Too many talented offensive players for that to continue to be the case. Everything is fine.
I am going to vote fine as well. I am not without concern, but ultimately at 80 points on the season, I mean, I think you'd be happy if you were at 80 points on the season on March 20th. You'd be pretty confident you're headed to the playoffs. They're at 80 points on the season, February 21st. They've got lots of time to get the requisite 14 points probably to get into the playoffs. And of course, they've got their sights set higher than that to hopefully win the division. But even then, I mean, we're talking about 12 wins to win the division, 24 points maybe to win the division. It's doable for them. And I think this is probably a good thing to have a little bit of a scuffle. If they had kept up this non 3-game losing streak that they had, you'd almost be worried about them in the playoffs after back-to-back losses in the playoffs. And if they were able to bounce back,
we talked about it. One of the tests and one of the things that, and frankly, I mean, he's a competitive guy. He doesn't like losing, but I bet there's a little bit of Rick Tocchet that relishes this, just in terms of better now than in the playoffs, as you say, or on the eve of the playoffs.
Right.
You've got ample opportunity to get your stuff back together here, and I suspect they will.
And you're not all that. Remember, you want to have confidence. You got to walk that fine line of having confidence, believing in yourselves, but not believing that you don't stink.
And one of the things that Rick Tocchet has done here over his 13 months in Vancouver as the head hockey coach, and we talked about it earlier in the season. The first thing he had to do was break them down. Guys, you're not very good. Don't start puffing chests out, walking around town like you know what doesn't stink because you've won 2 or 3 games in a row here. So he tore them down and he's built them back up.
Yeah.
And occasional reminders that this is a difficult league and it's not going to be a cakewalk, despite the fact that through 60 games, it has been close to a cakewalk for them. I mean, a lot of things have come easy for them. We talked about it yesterday. And we saw a lot of it in the comments of our poll question yesterday. What actually qualifies as adversity for the Canucks this year? The 2-game losing streaks, second week of the season, Philadelphia and Tampa. Calgary and Seattle in November.
Losing 3 of 5.
Really, you're going through the season with a fine-tooth comb to find adversity.
And I know you didn't want to hear anything about this, but I said last night, or I said yesterday going into the game, you know what? You need a bounce back performance. And you can't say win or lose necessarily because it's 82 games. You can't ride that roller coaster, so much, especially when you're in first place. You can't be so too points driven. That was a bounce back performance. They played a Stanley Cup favorite, never mind Stanley Cup contender. Canucks are a contender. The Avs are a favorite because they've done it before. So they're playing a Stanley Cup favorite, and they look very good. In fact, in a lot of ways, they won the game last night in terms of the balance of play.
No, I have so many problems with what you just said. I don't even.
Well, it's objectively true. They carried the balance of play at 5-on-5. Yes, they did.
Okay. Well, you say they won the game. It was 3-1 Colorado. They lost the game. We're beyond moral victories.
I said in a lot of ways.
Secondly, this team is the Stanley Cup favorite, Colorado?
It said is a Stanley Cup favorite.
Can there be more than one favorite?
Yes.
Okay. That team with Ryan Johansson playing second line center, and hats off to the pride of Port Moody because he had him a game last night when he needed one because they were on the market for a second line center. And with Georgiev in goal, you think that's a Stanley Cup favorite?
They've got this Nathan McKinnon fellow.
I've heard of him. Yeah. He's pretty good.
They got this Mikko Rantanen fellow,
also
Cale
pretty
McCarr
good.
fellow.
No, I'm just saying when you take a look at Vegas and you take a look at Edmonton and you take a look at Vancouver and you take a look at Florida and Boston, you think that team, Colorado, is amongst the Stanley Cup
the answer is yes. And again, because Vancouver has never come anywhere close to the achievements of the Avs, of the Bruins,
fair enough,
of the Panthers, any of those teams that you mentioned.
Let me ask this then. Why not Florida? They now lead the league in winning percentage, points percentage.
Florida's up there.
969. They have jumped over the Canucks during this 3-game losing streak. They're the defending Eastern Conference champion.
That's right. They were finalists last year. They got into the Stanley Cup final. They've accomplished a lot. They've proven they can win 3 rounds of NHL playoff hockey. So absolutely.
I got to say, though, in the narrow lens of last night's game and playing the top team, what you tweeted, what Grady tweeted, what I saw others tweeting with regards to the effort and the bounce back and the this and the that, I may have PTSD from most of the last 10 years, but I'm really sick and tired and done with the whole notion of moral victories for an 80-point team that is right now on track to be the President's Trophy winning team.
See, I
really done.
I would split the hair here in that and say, if they were a 68-point team and on the bubble of the NHL playoffs, then I would understand your sentiment. Because then you'd be like, this team has proven nothing. They are they're not in the playoffs yet. They have to learn how to win and bounce back. All that would be true if they were a 68-point team. They're in first place in the league at 80 points. They know how to win.
Right.
They've proven it all season long that they know how to win games. So, judging them by performance rather than the 2 points right now, yeah, I think you can do that because they've proven they can win.
No, and perhaps it's a semantic game at this point, Blake, but I do believe in process over results.
Yeah.
Big picture. But also, by the same token, I cannot sort of accept the days of, good try.
Well, you don't accept it
that's progress
in
it's
the long term. Like if they have 2 more of these efforts and both of those are losses as well, and they've lost 5 straight but played 3 really good games, no, then that excuse is out the window. But they gave up 10 goals the game before, Matt. And they had to travel and be at altitude. I mean, they played a very good hockey game, and they just didn't get the bounces. I mean, Colorado's off a tip. They've in a scramble play like the JT Miller goal was far better skill goal than either of the offerings from the Colorado Avalanche. They got some bounces, and hey, there's a little regression for you there, a little bit of PDO regression for you. That's an .898 goalie that beat them. That's not going to happen. You'd think most often.
Okay. When the aesthetics of the goal count for more than one goal, we can talk on that. But they all just count as one. The ugly ones and the pretty ones, right?
Right, but some are lucky and some are purely skill created. Some are aggression related and some are skill created.
I'm just telling you, and Grady as well, I will be fighting back on moral victories the rest of the way here.
Well, we'll have to take it on a game-by-game basis.
Okay.
And I'll tell you when you're wrong.
Let's get to the big story, top story, brought to you by Mr. Lube. The National Hockey League debut of Surrey's Arshdeep Bains. He has 2 scoring chances himself. He generates 2 more for Teddy Bluger. He takes a penalty and he's -2. But he played 4 minutes in the third period on the third line when others, Nil Zaman, Phil DiGiuseppe, Ilya Mikheyev, weren't playing a whole lot in the third period. 13-21 for the night. And he starts the game. A nice touch by Rick Tocchet starts the game against Nathan McKinnon, Cale Makar lining up alongside Bluger and Garland on that third line that has been so terrific in place of Dakota Joshua. I know there were a lot of Canucks fans hoping that he got that placement in his NHL debut, because if he's playing on the fourth line, it means he's probably not playing a lot, and it means he's probably not going to get many offensive opportunities with a couple of guys who, let's face it, don't generate much by way of offensive opportunity. But on that third line, that is putting a kid in a position to succeed and giving him some confidence in his first NHL game. Man, I thought he was going to score coming down off the right wing when he had that screen in the first period.
If that's game 10 of his NHL career, he's shooting.
He probably does. Well, you're talking about the 2-on-1.
The 2-on-1, sorry,
yeah,
yes.
Then there's the 2-on-1 where he probably should shoot, but he winds up batting the puck dangerously on goal. So that's a scoring chance as well. And then the 2 plays below the goal line where he's setting up Teddy Bluger. I mean, Teddy Bluger should score there. So he, by all rights, should walk away from this hockey game with a point or 2 or 3 the way he played.
Honestly, in that 2-on-1, I truly believe in his opening game, he's probably thinking, I can't keep on my first ever NHL 2-on-1.
Probably
I've
right.
got to try
the deferential culture of hockey. Right?
And then the instant chemistry, Rick Tocchet just looking at the profile of the player going, I think this will work on the third line. And it did. And the chemistry with Bluger, I mean, we've talked about how those guys seem to be on the same wavelength. Boy, he joined that wavelength. He logged into that Wi-Fi pretty easily, didn't he? And I did think it was kind of cute a couple of times watching the game, a great pass and then immediately scampering off on the line. I'd like to go look through his shift chart and see if there was any 22-second shifts in there, because he was minding his P's and Q's. He knew this was my debut on the road. I want to get caught in a long shift, because when you're on the road, you never know, especially in the second period. So he was he was taking no risks and yet still inserted himself into the play and asserted himself in a fabulous way. So congratulations to Arshdeep Bains. Our top story brought to you by Mr. Lube, 100% Canadian, started in Edmonton by a father and son team. As we looked at a father and son, there in Colorado as well. Warranty approved oil changes and now tire service and sales with no appointments as well. 16 locations in the Lower Mainland. For one near you, go to mrlube.com.
And he becomes the 4th player of Punjabi descent to play in the National Hockey League. Robin Bawa, we talked about him in 1989. Manny Malhotra, former Vancouver Canuck, in 98. Judar Kara in 2015. His father, as you mentioned, was in attendance. Let's hear from Arshdeep Bains. Well, first we'll hear about making his National Hockey League debut.
Yeah, it was really special. I think I almost kind of forgot to hit the pucks on the ice when I went out there, so that's how kind of I was just in awe of being out there, so it was really special.
How about the first shift and then maybe managing the nerves? Did you talk to anyone on the bench?
Yeah, I think everybody kind of came up to me and gave me some words, and throughout the game they were really positive with me, so it was a great experience, and the team really helped me through it.
Yeah, rookie lap for the ages. He touches the ground. He touches his heart. He whirls around that first lap, then knocks the pucks onto the ice, takes the first shot before his teammates join him. A really nice moment there.
Nice moral victory there for Arshdeep Bains.
It's a fine tradition
trolling
in the National Hockey League to give that rookie the solo lap to start. And as you mentioned, his father was in attendance. It's the mentors trip, dads and brothers involved traveling with the Vancouver Canucks. That was Arshdeep in conversation with Kate Pedersen, the Canucks reporter. Let's hear from him talking about this was a dream come true.
Yeah, for sure. I think just for stepping out there, it just feels like a dream. And then kind of when you get into your first shift and throughout the game, you kind of just like another hockey game. So yeah, it was really cool.
I wonder what your dad said to you before the game.
Yeah, I think he was a little emotional. Told me a little bit of water in his eyes, but that's every kid's dream, I think, to make their dad proud.
He didn't seem super wistful on the bench. Like he seemed like he was just it was a business day for him, like he
I'm sure what's that expression about the duck on top of the water?
Yes.
Looks really calm and the paddling below.
I'm sure he internalized it all, but he put a great foot forward there, and
He did.
And I think, Matt, if you're Rick Tocchet, you ain't got time to bleed. I didn't particularly see anything I needed to see again from Phil DiGiuseppe, not to pick on him, but if you're talking about why you'd keep him in the lineup, I mean, I think Sam Lafferty deserves to try to reassert himself,
right?
And I think it's DiGiuseppe's turn to sit
for sure. Arshdeep Bains from Delta Hockey Academy to the Vancouver Chiefs to the Valley West Hawks, the Red Deer Rebels, the Abbotsford Canucks, and now a Vancouver Canuck. And absolutely, he stays in the lineup against Seattle tomorrow. I don't see how you can take him out after that game. Nope. Not when, as you say, there were a couple of forwards who were worse than him. Amon plays 7 minutes and 21 seconds in this game. Phil DiGiuseppe plays 6 minutes and 55 seconds. And Blake, that's on the second game of back-to-back at altitude in Denver, as you say. So,
well, Robert Allen Richter on YouTube chiming in says, Matt, when you fly from Minnesota and play at altitude, that's practically a scheduled loss anyway. Sekeres is being a bitch.
Again,
harsh.
All of this loser mentality has to leave, everybody. If they're going to be a Stanley Cup champion, it can't be surrounded in an environment of loser mentality, moral victories.
They are the first place team in the National Hockey League. There's no loser
God, let's
mentality
hope
there.
that shit doesn't seep into the dressing room.
Banking points earlier on the season allows for these hiccups later on, so then you can sharpen up come
results-oriented business.
Context matters here,
right?
Though,
if it's
Matthew.
results-oriented, look at the results. They're in first place.
They lost last night. Again, in the narrow lens of last night, that was a loss.
The effort was there. A couple bounces. We're talking about a completely different outcome.
So if this show goes off the rails,
which it often
I
does.
don't care about your effort. The show has gone off the freaking rails.
What if it's a technical mishap that I have no control over? Bell hacked our internet. They're shutting us down. They're scared of the independent media.
Wouldn't be the first time.
Has he got something in his coffee this morning?
I don't know. He looks. He was really slow.
Did
at
the show
start.
go off the rails?
This morning he was really kind of slow and sluggish, I thought, when he first rolled in, and now he's really
more
zippy.
so than usual.
Yeah, now he's
I
really
build
zippy.
up to it. I'm the opposite of the Canucks. I start off slow, but I get my
Your
momentum.
third periods are good. Yeah.
Do you know that, ladies and gentlemen, I'm the one who goes and fetches the coffee for this outfit?
Not for this outfit, for Grady. I don't have third and fourth cups of coffee.
Okay.
Yeah.
Grady requested 2 coffees today.
Yeah, we're seeing the effects of that.
I would think so.
Yeah.
Look at the size of this thing. That is like an extra small at most places here.
Okay.
Need 2 minimum.
We do need.
Why is your video box so?
The people want to see me.
No, but why are you so? Why is your?
case.
Yeah, exactly. Like level up there, bud.
I'll stand up.
We need to. Yeah, you should be like
Well, if
equal
I
height,
mess with it,
slightly below me.
It's gonna
in terms
fall
of
off.
height. Okay.
One thing that Arshdeep Bains is not going to change, I wouldn't think anytime soon, is the Canucks power play, Matt.
I was about to get there.
And
thank you, Blake, for
getting the show
there.
back on the rails. And
Power play is 3 for 29 since Elias Lindholm joined. And incidentally, they're 4-1 since Elias Lindholm joined. JT Miller in the bumper spot was curious to begin with, but they snapped that 0 for 20 streak on the power play in Minnesota, then came back and went 0 for 2 against the Colorado Avalanche. Do we want to hear from Coach Talk?
But it bears noting that Minnesota goal was on a broken play, though,
right,
in which JT Miller's not in the bumper spot, and he's almost floated back into his old spot. So, why did
He's driving down the middle,
right,
as opposed to being stationary.
right? Like why they didn't go right.
Let's hear from Coach Tocchet on this sagging power play.
Yeah, thought we played a good game. We had a bunch of chances, just didn't put them in. It was a well-played game.
How about the way you contained particularly McKinnon's line and the defensive effort?
Yeah, did a nice job against them. McCarr, those guys are special players. I thought we did a really nice job against them. So, yeah, it's one of those things that we just couldn't score to get the equalizer.
They couldn't. And when you think back over to these 3 losses, if the power play works in all 3 of those games, I think you could make the argument that they win all 3 of those games. Like there's pivotal points in all 3 of those games. They get a power play goal, even just a singular power play goal. Those games turn into wins.
Yeah, that was actually talking about they couldn't get the equalizing goal. He did speak specifically to the power play, which we'll listen to here in a second. For everybody, and there were many, I couldn't believe, in fact, how many there were Canucks fans who were a little nervous about the activities of Rutherford and Alvin bringing in a frontline player to disrupt chemistry. I mean, I understand the shout that things were going so well for the Vancouver Canucks. Why would you mess with something that isn't broken? Now, big picture, long term, I certainly believe that Elias Lindholm makes them a better hockey club and is going to be valuable in many areas of the game, including penalty killing, including 5-on-5, including right-handed faceoffs, as we go through the rest of the regular season and into the playoffs. But this is one of the reasons why Jim Rutherford and many of us who are on the outside looking in believe if you're going to make a big move, make it well in advance of the deadline. Give your player, that your addition, as much runway as possible to integrate with the new team and feel comfortable before the Stanley Cup playoffs start. How many times have we seen it, Blake, in the past, where a guy gets added at the deadline, can be a jarring experience for a player, new team, new city, new accommodations, often away from the family, new set of teammates, and gets off to a sluggish start and just doesn't really have the impact that the acquiring team would hope. And oftentimes, I believe that's because they just don't have enough games before the Stanley Cup playoffs start. Now, if you look at this year's trade deadline, March 8th, the Vancouver Canucks have that ridiculous 9-game homestand immediately thereafter. I call it ridiculous just because I've never seen that in the National Hockey League. They literally do not leave the city of Vancouver for an entire month. So they have that 9-game homestand. And then they get an April schedule where you have 8 more games. So you would have games in 7. April. So you would have 17 games, which means Elias Lindholm would be halfway through those games if they had acquired him right at the deadline.
Yeah.
Instead, now he's got 8 more games in April. He's got the 9 in March. He's got a few more before the end of February here, not to mention a 3-game roadie at the beginning of March. So he's got oodles of time to figure this out and integrate, not to mention Rick Tocchet and the coaching staff has oodles of time to fix this power play.
Yeah. And I would think the easiest fix for him right now, like he's got a reset button. They played a certain system for a long time. Try it again.
Yeah.
Try it again.
Go back to Old Faithful here. Get JT Miller on that left flank where he can walk down, where he can walk down and be dangerous, right? As a shooter or as a setup guy.
And 2 right-handed shots. Yeah. See how it works. As a bumper and as a net front.
Well, they had Besser open on that last power play, and they just, for whatever reason, didn't want to go over to him. And maybe it's weird to integrate that right away, but we've seen Ovechkin, Line Stamkos all have success in the past in that spot.
That last late power play, literally, I don't know if anybody moved. Like, it was unbelievable.
No.
Like, how about escape behind the net, reset, make them move to chase you? Like, anything. They just stood there looking at the same passing options and did nothing. I wonder if Rick Tocchet is is rending his garments, to borrow a Tony Gallagher phrase, on the bench, or if that's what he wanted to see at that moment. I can't imagine that's the case, but I would hope they finally pull the trigger on a change.
Do we have that power play clip, Grady?
Yes, we do. Would you like to hear it?
Yes, let's hear from Rick talking on the power play specifically.
Well, the adjustments we got to start to defer and shoot some puck instead of defer and shoot the puck. Be a little more decisive. Get some pucks to the net. I don't think we're getting the pucks to the net. But we got to make sure we start getting pucks to the net.
I mean, sure, but there was a lot of bodies in front there too, which can be good and bad, I suppose. But such a skilled team, you'd think you could rely on more than just shooting a puck into a crowd and hoping. Getting those players, again, in movement. We saw some beautiful goals last year, of course, through the bumper. Beautiful goals this year on the flanks. Try to get back there.
Matt Fogler on YouTube, and hopefully I'm pronouncing that right, Matt. He says, watching the Winnipeg and Colorado games, you can see this team is very legit 5-on-5.
Yes.
Special teams got to get things figured out.
Yes, there were segments of the game last night where the Vancouver Canucks are absolutely controlling play and creating that pressure and making it difficult for Colorado to break out of their own zone. And you have large enough swaths of that sort of play, and that is the earmark of a pretty good team.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll give them that. Now, can I get back to something else we were talking about earlier in the week?
Sure.
Because I'm not sure you heard my mouth on that.
Oh, okay.
And I would wonder if things have changed now. After a ridiculously soft high sticking penalty on JT Miller, it was more like a high glove than a high stick. And then how about Ian Cole and that marginal, to put it politely, tripping penalty in the final minutes, which really hurts their ability to come back. And if you look at it, Ian Cole is having a conversation with one of the officials prior to the face-off and that shift where he takes the penalty, where he's assessed the penalty, perhaps. I should put it that way. That penalty comes with 3 minutes and 30 seconds left against Ross Colton, and it derails the Canucks' opportunity to a large extent.
I can't help but think Cole was talking to the officials at that point about the abuse that Bains was taking when they misconstrued where the puck was. The puck had been iced, and McCarr and somebody else were hooking Bains and pushing Bains back down onto the ice when the puck was nowhere near. And I couldn't help but believe that Ian Cole is going, how is that not interference? The puck's down there and they're doing that to him.
I couldn't believe Philip Hronek missed that empty net that he was presented with and a chance to talk. Yeah.
Well, he's got to get the shot off quicker. He can't be winding up like that.
Guys, do we think some of the Canucks whining about the officials, particularly Tyler Myers, after Saturday's game, I felt like we were playing two teams. Do you not think these officials are clapping back based on what we saw in the Minnesota game and the call? I absolutely think so.
Oh, yeah. Without
I absolutely think
refs
so.
talk,
Do they ever? We've seen look no further in Major League Baseball. How some of those guys are so soft-skinned. And of course, they protect the fraternity.
But every team does that throughout the season. Every team complains about the officiating throughout the season.
Not every team says it felt like we were playing two teams out there. When Myers went to the playing two teams, that crossed the line for these guys. Mark my words. And you watch tomorrow in Seattle. They may not be done with them yet. This is officiating in Gary Bettman's league.
Wow.
And personal vendettas are played out all the time. Look no further than Stefan Ogier and Alex Burrows.
And poor officiating isn't going anywhere. And you bet come playoff time, it's only going to get worse. Good teams got to battle through
Even
that.
Ron McLean, the ever apologist for the officials the other day, I think it was just last week, was talking about they had to make a makeup call. Like he was acknowledging the saying the quiet part out loud about makeup calls
happen all the time. And for some, that might be a little more understandable than the pure vendetta calls.
But when you make a mistake, you just made the mistake. Put it behind you. Be better.
Right.
Don't make two mistakes.
That's not how this league works, Blake.
No. Well,
in fact, that's not how a lot of officiating works.
I mean, I would hope that in this modern world,
see that in the NBA as well.
I would hope in this modern world, especially when communications are so easily leaked and that sort of thing. I think any sort of communique of guys, you see what happened with Myers last night? Don't let him make a fool of us. Like,
at this point, I think it's so cultural amongst the officials, it doesn't even need to be spoken or communicated.
So it's subconscious,
I think NHL referees, much like you, me, and everybody else, is out there on social media, are out there reading about the games, reading about the league, and they see Tyler Myers say, it felt like we were playing two teams tonight. That's it. That's the trigger. Oh, yeah? Okay. We'll show you.
I could see that as a trigger for an individual player. Like if that player does something silly, but against that player's team,
I mean, how do you explain those calls? Blake, you know this league. How often does the team that's trailing get a ridiculously soft tripping penalty called against them in the final few minutes of a hockey game?
Yeah, not often, but I mean, in a lot of ways, it's almost heartening that they don't fall into the trope of, oh, let's give them the power play to see if they can get back into it. Right? Like that's game management of, oh, let's create a dramatic ending.
Yeah.
You know?
And again, you referenced T. Gallagher earlier, and I'll reference him again. As Tony said, for years and years and years, it's not a directive. It's just these guys understand what kind of league their bosses are trying to create.
Yeah.
And their bosses are trying to create a parity-filled league where there's excitement right down to the final horn.
That's right.
And so if there can be a power play for a team that trails by a goal in the final 3 or 4 minutes of a hockey game, they are absolutely looking to make that call, create that power play and that excitement down the end of the game. Last night, we saw something inverse of that. Why did we see it? Again, I'll go back to the Canucks complaining about the officials after the game against Winnipeg on Saturday night. Rick Dhaliwal reports that there will be no games for Phil Kessel this week with the Abbotsford Canucks, that he continues to skate. It has now been 1 week since he stepped foot on Abbey Center ice and looked out of breath between drills, did not look in particularly great skating shape, game shape, to be expected when you've been out for 10 months. But what's your feeling in terms of where this is going with Phil Kessel at this stage of the game?
Well, I mean, that was day one, so no surprise that he was out of breath. And it would have been really rushing things for him to get inserted into the 2 games that they had versus Calgary last weekend. And of course,
what about this week, though?
This week they're on the road.
Mm-hmm.
So he's not traveling with the team unless I think he's got some sort of PTO signed. So I'm guessing he's with the skills coach and working hard under the tutelage of, hey, you know, maybe the Twins are out there with him right now and looking at him a little bit more closely. But it's due diligence. Why even bother with the PTO and taking up a roster spot of a developing player on your American League game night roster if you really think this is a non-starter? So I think they want to make sure it's a question and not a non-starter before they even get to that stage. So if you get through another weekend with no news, then I think that's probably a bigger harbinger of bad things.
Yeah, I think you're right. Although I am starting to get the sense and the vibe that this isn't going to work out. And there's part of me that wonders whether Rick Tocchet, who was very close with Phil Kessel in Pittsburgh, not to mention Alvin and Rutherford, who also know Kessel from Pittsburgh, helped them win a pair of Stanley Cups there. There's part of me that's beginning to wonder, did they throw Kessel and his agent a bone here? We'll bring Phil in, and maybe that will lead to other opportunities if it doesn't work out here.
I would have been way more heartened if his year last year was his year in 20-21.
Well, but I mean, therein lies the rub here. Father Time is
that's what I'm saying,
undefeated.
So if this is a 2-year younger Phil Kessel coming off a 20-goal, 43-point season with the Arizona Coyotes, then I'm a little bit like, okay, give him some time. But he was merely acceptable as a Vegas Golden Knight, like a 14-goal winger. I don't think you're desperate to get into your lineup. I think the Canucks have a lot of 14-goal wingers.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's over 82 games. With some power play opportunity, 14 goals.
Mm-hmm.
So it's got to look really good, I think, for the Canucks to be tempted.
I think we got to see what he looks like in a AHL game before we can.
I think a couple.
Oh,
yeah.
of course you
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
Of course you do. I'm starting to get a feeling on this.
Spidey senses.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just
And there's no real rush here, minus the actual trade deadline when you have to have them on the roster. So they can be patient
They've
with
got
them.
time. Yep.
They've called up Bains and they've got a couple injuries, so maybe they speed this up.
And
a
let's
bit.
face it, Arshdeep Bains looking as good as he did is not good news for Phil Kessel. Like,
no.
they'd much rather develop the young kid and give him a good look rather than Phil Kessel, who wasn't good enough for the Vegas Golden Knights in the playoffs last year.
And that's the conversation that we had last week, is that if this works out with Phil Kessel, does that block an Arshdeep Bains? Does that block a Vasily Podkolzin, an Atu Ratu, or whomever you fancy as an Abbotsford forward to bring on up here? And the other conversation we had was, if anyone from Abbotsford was going to have an effect on the Stanley Cup playoffs, they probably needed to be called up in the next 4 to 6 weeks, so they had enough games left in the regular season to make that impression on Rick Tocchet and the coaching staff.
Yeah.
And that's one of the best parts of this Arshdeep Bains story, is that he's been called up here with enough runway,
good sweet
to
spot.
Absolutely, to make an impression on the coaching staff and be considered for the opening night lineup in the Stanley Cup playoffs. We're getting a little ahead of ourselves, but he looked good yesterday. Of course, McCabe hasn't looked good. You're marching towards the deadline on the 8th of March, and whether or not you want to add that depth forward, if Arshdeep Bains can make an impression in the games between now and March 8th, maybe Alvin and Rutherford take a look at it and go, you know what? We feel like we're good at forward. We've got enough depth there. Let's make an addition on defense as opposed to up front.
Now, Arshdeep Bains isn't going to dissuade you from Jake Gensel's or do different needs. But maybe,
No.
But if Bains puts together more games like this, maybe he does dissuade you from the real peripheral depth winger trade. If you're just looking for a guy in case, maybe you don't bother flipping that 3rd, 4th rounder for that guy. If Bains puts together some consistent efforts like last night.
And on the trade deadline front, you mentioned Gensel, who of course is out right now. Pittsburgh with a tough loss, albeit they pick up a point against Bo Horvat and the New York Islanders. Their playoff hopes really dwindling here. And so you wonder if they're going to be selling. But another example for seller GMs that get to your business now, don't risk the asset being hurt. Former Vancouver Canuck, Nick Dowd, centerman, Washington Capitals. As Frank Saravelli has told us, because he's got term and because he's on a good contract, he could well fetch a 1st-round pick at the deadline. He gets hurt, upper body injury last night in the Washington win over New Jersey. Head coach Spencer Carberry saying he's day-to-day but will not travel with the team on the trip. So you've got Gensel hurt, you've got Dowd hurt, you've had Chris Tanev walking up and down tunnels in Calgary.
Yeah.
The signs are there for some of these sellers that you're probably wise to get to moving right now some of these deadline trade targets, as opposed to waiting things out, trying to squeeze more out of your would-be trade partners with the fear of loss leverage of March 8th and making moves. Because I got to say, I'm pretty surprised. We saw Lindholm, we saw Monahan in short order, and we have seen not a whole lot since.
No.
On the trade deadline file. Hampus Lindholm hurt for Boston. You wonder whether that forces them into.
You have to think there's one seller that's like, okay, we're not going to be one of those teams. We need to
exactly.
extract value out of this guy, so he has to move.
Let's get to our menu for today, and it's brought to you by Greta, 70 West Cordova. Come join us Thursday evening. Doors open at 6. $10 tickets. You can get them nationgear.ca, but hurry up. We're running short there. Great food, prizes, drink specials. We'll watch some hockey and raise some money for Canucks Place Children's Hospice. That's Thursday, starting at 6 p.m. Greta, 70 West Cordova. Irfaan Gaffar is going to join us, playing to talk about there with Arshdeep Bains, plus the Canucks trade deadline activity. We'll get to some hashtags, the best and worst of Twitter. Pretty good Canadian derby going on in the world of golf to earn Olympic berths. because it is a Summer Olympic year, 2024.
That's right.
Off to Paris in July. Patrick Johnson is going to join us as well. Plus, then Casey Grable from Greta is going to join us.
Best Bets, a presentation of Sports Interaction, your homegrown sportsbook and casino. And along the lines of the NHL trades that you're talking about, Kyle Dubas said that he's going to wait to see what the next 2 weeks brings before a final decision is made on Jay Gensel. The Montreal Canadiens can maybe shorten that a little bit. One more loss tomorrow for the Penguins. Does that 2 weeks start to shorten if they lose 3 in a row, 4 in a row, 5 in a row? Canadians are at 280 to go in and spoil the party in Pittsburgh. It's pretty good value too.
Yep. I looked at the field at the Mexico Open, this week's PGA Tour stop, and with all due respect to Canadian Taylor Pendrith, who has had some decent results, but when he's the 5th betting choice, it probably means you don't have the strongest of fields coming off the California swing. Tony Finau won this tournament last year and is far and away the best player in the field. Plus, it's golf, so the value's there. You get him at 9-1.
Yeah, that's good value. Sports Interaction, your homegrown sports book and casino. Custom props and parlays you won't find it anywhere else. Speaking directly to you, the Vancouver sports fan. Scan the code, get a 200% welcome bonus from Sekeres Price. It's Sports Interaction. Bet local, must be 19 years of age, and please play responsibly.
Irfaan Gaffar is next.
If you don't have tickets for a big game at the rink, go to Greta Bar, 50 West Cordova Street, and you can soak up the atmosphere, whether you have tickets and are walking to and from the rink or not. It's a great place to catch the game. And for road games, of course, like February the 22nd, cheer them on at Greta Bar. Spend $10 on a ticket at nationgear.ca. Proceeds from the night with Canuck Army and Sekeres Price. Go to Canuck Place Children's Hospice. We'd love to see you there. February 22nd, Greta Bar, 50 West Cordova.
Great Clips is the official hair salon of the National Hockey League. There are 37 salons in Vancouver and the Lower Mainland, all Canadian-owned and operated. Download the app and find the nearest to you. When you're up next for a cut, you'll get a ready next text. Great Clips. It's going to be great. Irfaan Gaffar joins us now. He's been joining Jeff on Rinkwide. The new guy. What did you make of the new guy last night, Irf?
Well, to start, let's just, I tweeted it out. An Indo-Canadian male who grew up in Surrey, rode the King George Expo line to hockey games as a kid, gets to make his NHL debut for his hometown team he grew up watching. I mean, the story writes itself. Credit to him. Undrafted in the WHL, undrafted in the NHL, was the AHL All-Star MVP this season. The guy's worked his you-know-what off to get to this point. Happy for him, happy for his family. And he didn't go in there and was completely lost. I think he went in there and he showed some signs of being a hockey player and being able to handle his own. The Canucks, obviously earned him with this, or gave him an opportunity with the season that he's been having to come up to the big club and, make some NHL money. But, I think a couple games down, he doesn't pass to Brock on that 2-on-1. He shoots it and he hits the net on the one that he missed. That could be a goal, and it could be a whole different thing we're talking about.
Oh, he sets up Bluger twice right in front. There was the early chance walking in with the screen off the right wing. No, it was a fabulous.
Bluger was snake bit. Like they're
no, truly. Like Arshdeep Bains could have 2 or 3 points last night. The way that game went down, and Irf maybe makes his Rogers Arena debut Saturday against Boston, or even Tuesday against Pittsburgh. Like, just amazing stuff here going forward.
Oh, it's great. And I think the story, obviously, it's huge. Just the 4th Punjabi player, obviously, to make his debut in the NHL. And then there's just so many storylines that you can go. There's a whole community here, obviously, in the Lower Mainland and around the NHL that's just really happy for this kid. But can you imagine? I mean, obviously, he grew up watching his home debut against the Boston Bruins. Like, it's just, this sort of stuff just writes itself. It's great.
Well, yeah. And for people that, we've been hearing it a lot with the PWHL launching is that, in that case, girls need to know what's possible. This is, again, just a reminder. It's possible for the Indo-Canadian community, right? Like it can be slow sometimes, that progress, and you want it to be a little bit faster. And you'd think that, all these years after Robin Bawa that there would have been more. But let's hope that with media being what it is, that that's setting forth some dreams, isn't it?
No, absolutely. And I think for anyone watching, and you grow up, you want to be a broadcaster, you grow up, you want to be a hockey player, you want to do something in the sports world. It's not just for women, it's for Indo-Canadians, it's for anyone, any walks of life. You see someone that's kind of achieving their dream and doing some crazy things at a high level. Anything's really possible if you put your mind to it. And I think the biggest thing is for me and him is you have to credit his family. I really do. His mom and his dad, and the way that he was raised. Obviously a young man with a very, very good head on his shoulders and an extremely good work ethic.
You know who's also happy about all this?
Pièce de résistance, dad on the trip, taking it in. And
fortunate that it just happens to be the dad's trip too. So he gets to have that. But you know what? Who's also really happy about this? Those 20-year-olds in the WHL that lead the league in scoring as undrafted guys, because he's not alone. Like, there's a lot of undrafted guys that in their 20-year-old season in the CHL lead that league, and still maybe they get an AHL contract offer. But this is proof. Hey, you're 20 years old leading the CHL, but that's still pretty darn good. And I think maybe the next guy that's in that place that's undrafted and leading a CHL, maybe he's going to get a little bit of a deeper look if a guy like Arshdeep Bains can make something of this.
No, 100%. And I mean, there's always that, decision you have to make. Are you going to end up going the college route? Are you going to stay in the CHL? Do you want to go and get your education, or do you think that there's an opportunity? I mean, Arshdeep Bains is proving that, yes, if you put your mind to it and do put in the work, there is that opportunity. I mean, it doesn't happen to everyone. There's a lot of diamonds in the rough, but teams will definitely be going out there and looking that this is, an example of maybe pay a little bit more attention to some of these kids that are in their 20s and putting up some big numbers.
Well, and it's a good point, Blake, because the NCAA free agent is more likely to make it than the CHL free agent in a lot of cases. Irf, before he did his rookie lap, he touched the ground, he touched his heart. Take us through that. I understand this is something that he does often.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he does it every game. I think it's a sign of basically going into the battlefield for war. And I think it's older, it's a touch of like pride, and it's one of those things. And I think it's something that he's kept with him, and he's very near and dear to his heart. And obviously cares a lot about where he's from. He understands, the history of who he is as a person, and where culturally what he's had to go through and what his parents have had to go through to get him to where he needs to be. And I think it's just one of those things where it's a very simple thing. He went and does it. I think he does it almost every game, and it's a sign of respect.
Not quite moving on, but in terms of we're talking Houston, the fit on that line with Bluger and with Garland, what do you make of that?
They had some chances. I mean, I think that was the one thing where you looked at it and said he didn't go in and looked out of place, but Bluger buries a couple of chances. I mean, you mentioned it. He could have had 2 or 3 points there in his debut for the Vancouver Canucks. Obviously, when Dakota Joshua comes back from injury, there's going to be some movement there. We'll see if Arshdeep can stick around. I'm not entirely sure if he's going to be the guy that, is going to be the guy that gets to stay up here with the big club. Because if he's not playing here, I really don't think that there's a reason to keep him here. If he's playing in the American League and putting up the numbers and having the season that he is, you need to have him keep playing games. So the fit was good for the first game. I wonder if there's an opportunity for him to move up in the lineup. If they're going to shake things up some more. I don't know if the Pia Suter experiment or how long that's going to last with JT Miller and Brock Besser. So if you're going to want to give a kid with a chance, maybe get his legs under him even better or even more, why not, put him up with JT Miller.
With that chemistry, though, my goodness, I don't know that you'd want to break it up now. He looks like he's a member of that third line, but it sounds like you think he's in versus the Kraken, though.
Yeah, I think if Dakota Joshua can't come back, I think that you give him another shot. I mean, if Joshua's hurt and still unable to, be able to play in the game, I think why not? I think that's the easy answer. Obviously, the good storyline is that it is still the fathers and mentors trip, and his dad's still on it. So, maybe get him in again and then kind of see what happens when you come back to Vancouver. But the way that he played, I understand that he was -2, and the fancy stats didn't really suggest that he had a great game, but that's if you want to read the game. If you actually want to watch the game and see what he did and see the impact that he had when he was on the ice with his minutes, you almost have to put him in again if you're Rick Tocchet.
Yep, I'm with you. 2.5 weeks here till trade deadline. Do you think there's any chance the Vancouver Canucks take another last go at Elias Pettersson and see if he's willing to re-sign before March 8th?
It's a tough one because I think that at one point, the Canucks are willing to talk. They've been very clear that they're willing to talk and wanting to, engage in negotiations with CAA. And Elias Pettersson has maintained, his stance from the beginning is we want to talk after the season's over, and I'll figure it out when the season's over. I think that if you're the Vancouver Canucks and if you're going to CAA and his camp and, there's not really a response and they keep saying that we're going to wait, let's wait until the end of the season, you're not going to publicly say that you're upset or angry about it. But I think it is a little disappointing. He's one of the two cornerstones of your franchise. I guess you can put Thatcher Demko in there, but it's really Elias Pettersson and Quinn Hughes. Now, Quinn does have his long-term contract, but what's with 40? And is it him? We've heard that, saying that, maybe it's a change of scenery or sort of things like that was something. And then the media attention and everything that happens that in this city is a little bit different. Elias Pettersson is a different guy. He's not wired the same as some of these different NHLers. So it's interesting because I'm not entirely sure that the longer this goes, there's going to be a positive solution to it. Right? Mm-hmm. Is he going to sign a short-term deal? Is it going to be a long-term deal? That's the thing that we were talking about in the beginning of the season is what's it going to be for Elias Pettersson? Is it going to be short-term or long-term? And now we're sitting here and saying that, are they even talking? What's the conversation going to happen at the end of the season when they do talk?
Mm-hmm. Do they move on to try and get Philip Hronek or say Dakota Joshua done before the trade deadline, Irf? And then is it just too much of a political minefield to go to Elias Lindholm and start those discussions before Pettersson? Before you're engaged with Pettersson.
I think the Lindholm one is going to be on the back burner a little bit. I think they want to take care of, their quote unquote, their guys first. Elias Pettersson obviously is the number one. Teddy Bluger is a guy that they want to re-sign as well. If I'm Joshua, I'm not sure that the Canucks can afford me for the season that I'm putting up and what I can go out and make in free agency. He's probably thinking $2 million minimum for him. And I'm not sure the Canucks want to pay him that, to be completely honest. You hope you can, and you hope that you're going to have enough cap space to be able to do those things. And that Philip Hronek's number is going to start with an 8. Right. And that's going to be the ask from his agency. And as it should, guys get paid. I have no problem with guys going to get their money. And if, they can convince a team to sign him to that contract, go ahead and do it. But it is Elias Pettersson. I think that, they've made it very clear that Pettersson is their guy and they want to be able to do this and have a long-term contract. But at some point, you're right, Matt, you have to look at everything else and figure it out. I think that they know in the back of their mind what their number is. I really do. I think that they've budgeted and they know what it's going to cost, whether it's a short-term deal or a long-term deal. The Canucks have to know. Now it's really on Elias Pettersson and his camp as to what they want to do.
It's a wild game, and to some degree the Jets game instilled some defensive panic, certainly amongst some Canucks fans, if not Canucks management themselves. Had a lot of people talking about the need for Chris Tanev again, but we know that cost is reportedly exorbitant. Do you think the Flames have been tabled any first round pick offers just yet? Are they still waiting for somebody to meet that price? Do you think he's going to ultimately shake loose of the Flames?
Well, I think if they were offered a first round pick for Chris Tanev and they didn't trade him with that pick, then that's all. That's a big mistake by the Calgary Flames, right? I think that there's talk that there's second round picks now being thrown around for a guy like him. There's 3 or 4 teams involved. I wonder what Chris Tanev's going through. His name's been in those trade rumors for a couple of years now, and he's always either A, made it through a deadline, B, never been moved, and C, this is one of those times. They have his 10-team no-trade list. They know exactly where he doesn't want to go to. There was a link to the Ottawa Senators. Now, I don't know if it went as far as going to Chris Tanev and him being like, well, they're not on my list, I'm not going there, with an extension from the Senators. So that could have been an interesting one. But I think that of the contenders, you look at the Dallas Stars, the Toronto Maple Leafs obviously have always been a name linked to Chris Tanev here in Vancouver as well. So it's going to be interesting over the next couple of weeks to see where and who panics the most if you're a team and is willing to give up that first round pick. Because I think once other teams start to make moves, it's kind of the domino effect starts to happen. And probably about a week before the deadline, maybe 5 or 6 days, or even the night before, have we seen in some cases where things start to go absolutely wild.
Yeah, and you do wonder whether injuries to Jake Gensel, Nick Dowd left the game last night for Washington, get some of these selling GMs a little uneasy, and get them pushed in the direction of a trade. Okay, let's say it's not Tanev, Irf. Do they pivot to Sean Walker then? And is the cost not too dissimilar for Walker out of Philadelphia?
Yeah, it might be. I mean, he's an unrestricted free agent after this season, so there definitely is that. You're going to have to re-sign him. And I read something that's saying that, he's in a unique situation right now. It feels like, you're not a guy that's usually normally wanted, or this coveted at this point in the season. But with the way things are, with the way cap is, there's just not that much out there. You almost have to if you're a team. And he's a guy that kind of fits their mold. He's a right shot defenseman. He's 29 years old, and he's having a pretty good season. The thing is, do the Philadelphia Flyers think that they're a team that can go on a little bit of a run here? Do they want to try and keep him? Do they want to try and extend him to maybe make the playoffs here? I know that the guys love playing for John Tortorella down there, and they're kind of building something that is pretty good. But if someone's willing to give you a first or second round pick or something for a guy like Sean Walker, you almost have to look at it if you're the Flyers.
He's a better offensive player. He plays roughly the same minutes as Tanev, and he's almost half the cost, so he's a little easier to fit cap-wise without any other moves.
Would the Canucks consider reworking the defense, trying to add an extra right-handed shot? Like, is there anybody departing the defense, do you think?
Look, we've covered this team for a long time and watched them every single game for a while. The defense has been their biggest issue for a long time. And I think you have you have stopgaps in there. The Noel Juleson story is a great story. The Zadorov thing, it's great. He's big, he's physical, he's tough to play against and all that. But they still don't have the depth. I mean, if Susie comes back, can you really trust him in the playoffs with the way that he's been hurt this season? And then if, God forbid, someone gets hurt, is your next call up Mark Friedman? Like, you need to have some more defensive depth. If one of your top guys goes down, who's going to come in and be able to play those big minutes, to eat those big minutes, to play that playoff type of hockey that this team wants to play? So, yeah, I think that they do need to rework it a little bit. And I think you need to add some guys, not just one, but two if you're going into the postseason. Yeah, one of them can be a guy that's, a 7-8 defenseman, but you might want a guy that's in there that's able to play everyday minutes.
What about Mikheyev, or what's his future with the Vancouver Canucks between now and March 8th?
I think if you're the coaching staff, hopefully be able to play a consistent hockey game. He was good in the first period. He was decent in the first period against the Colorado Avalanche. Then he disappeared. And I think that that's the troubling part about him this season. He's just never been the same. He's never been the guy that they acquired, to be completely honest. The guy that played for the Leafs, the guy that was tenacious on pucks, that went into the forechecking zone, that went and retrieved pucks for his centerman. He really hasn't been that guy. And I think it's the unfortunate part is because that's a guy that they paid a lot of money to. So I'm not going to sit here and say that they're, actively shopping a guy like him. But if a team called for his services, I'm sure the Canucks are definitely listening, as they should to a lot of their guys. You're in the business of winning hockey games and improving your team. And if you think your team's good enough to make a Stanley Cup, you're going to look at every option to try and improve your hockey club.
Lastly, Phil Kessel. What's the next step here, if there's any step with Phil Kessel and the Vancouver Canucks?
Yeah, I think for him, just trying to get into game shape without playing games, and it's probably one of the most difficult things to do if you're an NHL player, right? Dude hasn't skated in forever, and he hasn't skated and competed at a high level in a very, very long time. I understand the experience, I understand the pedigree, I get the resume, but at some point, you're going to want him to play games if you're really considering it, whether that's in the American League and you get him into some game thing situations. So I just think right now it's a wait and see process to what the next step is. To be completely honest, I think they're going to get him on the ice as much as they can, working with their skill guys down there, and hope that they're in a position where they come back next week and they're at home and they have some discussions with Alvin and Rutherford and see where this progresses, if it does.
Yeah, I'm certain to have my doubts at this stage. Great stuff, Irf. Thank you for the time. Keep on keeping on with Jeff, and we'll talk to you next week.
All right, gentlemen. Thank you.
Hey, everybody. If you're enjoying what you're seeing here, then follow along with Sekeres Price on YouTube. I promise more content coming.
The kids call it subscribe on YouTube.
Well, how about liking it?
Do that as well. Smash it right now.